Hi, this is Bill Raymond. See all these amazing images that are on the screen right now? I created these simply by typing text into a text box, and an AI created the images for me. Now, it might look simple at first. However, it can get a little bit complicated if you're trying to get something exactly the way you want it. And that's what we call prompt engineering. I'm going to walk you through the absolute basics so you will improve how you can create generative AI images yourself. This training video comes in the form of 4 unique sections. The first section is where I'm going to talk about generative AI so you understand what it is and how it works. Don't worry, I'm not going to get technical on you, but you will learn something along the way, I'm sure. In the second part, we'll talk about some of the challenges around generating AI images and also a little bit about something that I call token anxiety. In the third section, I'm going to walk you through a process that I call Snap. And it's a 10 to 15-minute process that you can use to improve how you generate prompts to create images. So you get something more along the lines of what you're looking for the first time as opposed to the 10th time. In the fourth section, I will walk you through a real world example of creating an image using that snap process that I walked you through. As always, I use YouTube chapters, so use that scrubber to find what you're looking for. There might be more than 4 sections. And also, of course, in the description, you'll find a list of all of the chapters as well as links to access them. It is almost magical when you type in a prompt for your very first time and see what comes out because it's a unique image specific to what you asked for. Now, how does that work? Well, in the background, there is this thing called a machine language learning model. Someone is feeding tens of thousands, maybe even millions of images into it. And those images have patterns. And over time, the computer will start to recognize those patterns. And it will learn how to draw its own clouds, cats, dogs, trees, based on those patterns. Now, let me explain why we need to feed it so many of those images. First of all, let's say I asked the AI to draw a dog. Well, if it only has 1 or 2 types of dogs, then I'm not going to get anything that fanciful. But if it has thousands of dogs, then I can start to see some unique images. If we walked into a park and you had never seen a dog before, I can just point there and say, that's a dog. You could then look around the park and recognize dogs moving forward. I didn't need to train you on thousands of dogs before you could understand that they were dogs. Now, you may not know the types of dogs that they are and what they're called, but you certainly will recognize small ones, big ones, medium sized ones, jumping, laying down. You'll recognize dogs. The computer needs more images to fully recognize what a dog is. Now, there's a little bit more going on here. The machine language model can't simply see images of a cat, for example, and know that they're a cat. So there are human being elements to this where we actually have to tag the images. So here is an example of tagging a cat image. You can see that we say this is a cat. It's a furry cat. It's sitting in front of a curtain. It has ears, eyes, paws. What the machine language model will do is start to look for patterns and connect those to the words that we used to tag the image. We can do that with human beings too. For example, here we have a woman, it's a person, and there's sky and hair and eyes, nose, mouth. You get the idea. Let's say for a moment that I asked you to take these 2 images and just think about it for a moment. Take a piece of paper and a pencil and draw a human being with cat ears. I bet you could do that, right? Well, that's because you recognize the patterns in both of these images. That process of me asking you to draw something with I can go ahead and type that prompt into a text box, and it will read that and say, okay, I understand the words that you're saying because the images have been tagged, and also because I understand those patterns in the images. So now I can say a person with cat ears. And when I generate this, what it's going to do is start with sort of a fuzzy image and slowly build it up until it feels like all those patterns have turned into the image that you're looking for. Now, here's a curious thing about writing these prompts and how AI works. You're never going to get the same image twice. So here I'm going to generate it again, and I'm going to generate it again. And each time I'm going to get a different image. Now that you know the AI won't generate the image for you until you tell it what to draw, you can start to recognize the importance of the prompt that you type into that text box. Let's pretend that we are creating a new children's book, and one of the images that you want is a happy cat flying over dogs at the beach. That sounds good. So let's go ahead and generate this. As you can see, the AI generated a few different options for us. Now, granted, this image does include the things that I asked for, but what do you notice here? Well, for me, that cat looks a little evil for a small child to look at. I think that might give them nightmares. So what you'll do is refine that prompt until you get something that's maybe a little bit more children's book friendly. Let's try a new prompt. A cute, happy cat flying over other dogs and cats at the beach. So we said cute and happy this time, not just happy. And also, it's in an oil painting. Let's go ahead and generate that. Ah, there. That looks cute and fun, and I could see myself narrating that image. Did you notice a common denominator with all the examples I provided? I bet you noticed that I had to keep regenerating those images until I got them right. And that is absolutely the case. So when you are starting off, you're going to probably work with a system that has some sort of a credit or a token system, where at the beginning of some period, whatever that period is, you'll get a number of tokens to generate images. Here, for example, I'm typing a cat. Well, really, what I wanted was a black cat under a ladder, and I keep refining that until I get the image that I'm looking for. And then I'm watching those tokens dwindle down, and I still don't quite get the image that I want. Now I'm worried because I keep having to revise it, and then I'm watching as I'm getting down to my last tokens. What this does is it creates token anxiety. That's a term I made up. I don't know if anyone else has come up with that. But that token anxiety is real because you're really trying to get that image right as quickly as you can. My objective with this video course is to reduce that anxiety by defining the upfront prompt so that you won't have to revise it as many times. That will leave you with more tokens to create more images. To reduce that anxiety, I have created a process. Now, of course, I'm a process-oriented person, but here's the deal, this is only gonna be a very short process. It's only gonna take you maybe 10, 15 minutes, and it's something you'll be able to almost do in your head after you get used to it. I call this process SNAP. SNAP stands for Spark, Nuance, Ask, and Perfect. I'm going to walk you through each one of these with both a template for you to use and a real-world example that we're going to use later in this video. So let's start with step one, which is spark. This is a spark of an idea, and we're going to refine that a little bit by using an objective template. So let's take a look at that right now. And I'm going to read it off to you and explain what we're looking at. Create an image for, and you define the purpose of the image. If you're working with a team of people, maybe you're creating some sort of an image together, this is an even more important step so you're all on the same page as to what you're creating. The focus should be on and define that object, and I'm going to give you an example of that in a moment. The image should be what? Photorealistic, like maybe it was taken with a camera in real life, or should it be artistic? Maybe it's oil painting or hand drawn or something like that. The image will be used for what? A deck, social media, an ad. Any of these options are going to decide the size of the image, and you are going to have to let the image generation tool know about this before you start getting too far down the road. Optionally, do not include object or objects. What is this all about, this do not include? Well, let's say, for example, that my objective is to show a beautiful living room, but what I don't want is to have a television in there. I can give the AI what's called a negative prompt and say, don't add a television into the room. Now, here's the thing. The AI may or may not draw the television, but it's a really good chance it won't if you give it that negative prompt. However, if you say draw a living room with a person watching a movie, it's likely going to have that person sitting in front of a television, even if you say, don't show a television. So that's something that you need to consider. Let's use a real world example. I'm going to pretend that I work in the communications department at a large organization, and the executives are going to do a big team building exercise at a lodge in the mountains. Now, they want to talk about this exercise, but they haven't decided where it's going to be. So they asked me to create something from scratch. So I say, okay, well, let's just step back for just a few minutes and talk about the objective and use that template. And this is what we came up with. Create an image to socialize our team building retreat at a lodge in the mountains. The focus should be on the exterior building. The image should be photorealistic, so it should look like it was taken by a camera, and it will be used for a deck to present internally. So it'll probably be in PowerPoint or something like that. The image should not include people. This sets our objective. We've gone from that spark of an idea to hashing that out so we know what it is everyone's looking for. Prior to the creation of this video, I did not follow the snap process. Let's take a look at an example that I already created. As you can see, we said that this is going to be a lodge in the mountains, and we certainly have that with both of the first two images. But I kept getting the image on the right-hand side, where the mountains were all over the place, and there's this tiny little lodge in there. And I realized part of creating this Spark objective is to make sure that we define the object that is in focus. And by adding that, you can see now that the lodge is in focus. The exterior of the building is in focus. Also, we decided that we want this to be photorealistic, so I made sure that I selected that. And the negative prompt is to not include people. So as you can see on the right-hand side, the people are in there. But once I added the negative prompt of no people, I have a different image altogether. Step 2 in this snap process is called nuance. What are the things that really refine the image that we're going to generate? So the vibe, the place, the feel, the time. This gives a little bit more of a description. For example, we had this lodge in the mountains example. Maybe I wanted it to be in the 1930s by a very specific lake in Michigan. All those things can play out here. Let's go into our template and see what that looks like. I'm going to read it. Located in a place at the time of day that is of a certain vibe and includes other characteristics. Okay, so what we're doing here is trying to refine what this image should look like so that we're not typing all those things in, regularly generating the images. So here's what I want to point out. You don't have to use all of these. Maybe you don't care what time it is. In my example that I'm going to show you in a moment, I do very much care what time it is. But if there's something that you don't need, just omit it. That's fine. If there's some other nuance that you need to add, go ahead and add that to the template. And of course, if there's some other nuance that you need to add, now's the time to do it. Now let's go back to our case study of that corporate communications person creating an image for an executive retreat at a lodge. As we recall, we said the lodge will be in the mountains and that the focus should be on the lodge and no people. But now let's go into the nuances and drill down a little bit more. Certainly, we want it located in the mountains, but also we added by a lake. We want it to be at twilight. Well, twilight is that time when the sun's almost down, the skies have gone from that bright, bright, washed out blue to a deep, deep blue. Maybe you see the moon or some stars popping out. Maybe there are deeper shadows being cast. The lodge is lit up with orangish, yellowy colors. Then we want inspirational scenery. You can add those to your prompt, and very often little extra nuances will be added to the image. So maybe there's some fog rolling over those mountains instead of just mountains. Maybe the clouds are more intense or something like that. So any number of different things could happen when you do that. You can play around with it and provide space for text. This is important because maybe you want to put text directly over the image. And you don't want to have the lodge take up the full image because then the text is going to be covering it. Just like I did before, I'm going to show you some before and after images when you do not follow the snap process. On the far right is when I did not follow the process, and on the left is when I did follow the snap process. So let's take a look at this. The mountains by a lake. Well, we didn't provide the lake on the right side, so we can see there's a nice lodge with mountains. That looks pretty good, right? But look at the one on the left when we added that additional nuance. Now the lake is there and the mountains are reflecting off of the lake. I think it looks better. Now let's look at this twilight one. I was trying to get some scene where the lodge was just a little bit more in focus with the rest of the surroundings. And without using the words twilight and inspirational scenery, just typing in some random words, that one on the far right is what I got. You're kind of like looking up at some odd angle into a window with trees surrounding it. That is not an inspirational image, but I added twilight with inspirational scenery. And look at that one on the left-hand side. Here we have that lodge. It's glowing with those orangey lights. We have the lake there with more reflections. Look at the clouds. They look a lot more dramatic in this image. I think that looks a lot more inspirational. Then finally, let's take a look at the last one, which is provides space for text. At the far right, this is where I was just trying to get the lodge in the image, and you can see there's no space for me to put any kind of text with, let's say, the date and time and an RSVP link. I can with the one on the left because I specifically told the AI to leave room for text. Now let's talk about step 3 in our snap process. That's A for ask. This is where we're going to create our very first prompt and put that into the generative AI image building system. So to do that, I'm proposing that you'd sketch this out a little bit first. So that's actually a key part of this is the sketch. And don't worry, you do not need to be an artist. Wait until you see how I did it. You're going to find it to be very easy. And again, I think after you do this once or twice, you'll just do it in your head and you probably don't even need to follow any kind of a template. Here's what I do. I lay out the size of the image. So in this case, there's that box that's going around everything here. That's because I have that deck. Remember, we said we want it to be in a deck. So it's going to be a lot wider and a little bit shorter. So that I have that box drawn out to remind me that there's only so much space that I have in order to create this image. Then I have a few boxes that go left to right, top to bottom, and I'm doing it in a clockwise fashion. Let's take a look. So I just put some sort of a placeholder and I say, this is the primary object. And then I might have some other key object that I want there. And then I have some other object. And usually you don't want more than 2 or 3. And then are there more objects or experiments that we want to try? This is going to make a lot more sense when I show you the case study in just a moment. Finally, we put some of the additional attributes that we have defined in the bottom right. So for example, do we want this to be a photo or an image? Are there any negative prompts? As you'll recall, we have that corporate communications role that's working on the retreat. So let's look at that Spark objective one more time. Create an image to socialize our team building retreat at a lodge in the mountains. The focus should be on the exterior of the building. The image should be photorealistic and be used for a deck to present internally. The image should not include people. Finally, we have located in the mountains by a lake, so we're adding some of the nuance there. During twilight, with inspirational scenery, and provides space for text. All right, now let's take a look at how we would sketch that out. First, you're going to notice right away that object that we talked about. Notice that I'm throwing clip art onto the screen. I just want to kind of take a look at what the general image might look like. So we have the exterior of a rustic lodge. We are set in the mountains. I even put a little sun sort of tucked away down there to remind me that it's twilight. By a lake with space for text. And there's some experiments that I want to try. Maybe I want the space for text to be where the lake is, like I showed you before. Or maybe I want that grass to be front and center in front of the lodge, where I can maybe put a little signpost that has the information. So I might want to play around with that a little bit. And then finally, we have our attributes: photorealistic, twilight, inspirational, and no people. Now that we have the sketch, we can build a prompt with it. And you can see we have 1, 2, 3, and 4 in there along with some attributes. So we can just write the sentence just like that. So here we go. Prompt number 1 is exterior of a rustic lodge set in the mountains by a lake. Twilight, inspirational, leave room for text. Now, let me just walk you through this a little bit. First of all, I just typed everything that was in that little rectangle over there in our sketch. But also noticed I separated each of the objects with a comma. Also, the things that sort of are overarching themes for the image, I put them after a semicolon. Now, every generative AI engine is slightly different, but I've found this to be a fairly universal way of communicating what it is that I'm looking for. Now, as I mentioned, we do have these other things, these experiments that we wanted to try. So, prompt number 2 is almost the same. Exterior of a rustic lodge, set in the mountains, by a lake, lots of grass is the last object that I put, lots of grass. So that means that I might want to have some grass in the front of the lodge that allows me to put some sort of a signpost in it, as opposed to having space on the side where I would put some text. So with that, we can now go into our generative AI system and start building our image. But before I jump into the demo, we'll quickly explain what 4 is because 3 and 4 overlap a little bit. And that final step in the snap process is to perfect the image. And that's where we're refining it. As I mentioned earlier in this video, when you type your prompt and get a few images to select from, chances are you're not going to get the one that you want right away. You're going to refine it and generate a few more and generate a few more until you get it just right. I'm going to do 2 walkthroughs. The first one I'm going to do fairly quickly because I just want to show you what it takes to do these revisions without the snap process. So we're in a meeting, I'm in that communications department. Someone says we're going to have a retreat in the mountains at a lodge. And so I just type those words in and let's see what we get. It might be pretty good. The next one, we're going to use the snap process where we went through and generated the prompt to begin with. And then we can do some comparisons to see the differences. Let's get started. For my example, I'm going to use Adobe Firefly. This is their text to image generator. I'm going to clear off the space and paste in my text. It says a lodge retreat in the mountains and choose generate and see what we get. Our first results don't look too bad. You can see here it created a pretty cool looking lodge in the mountains. There's lots of green moss and fog here. I'm not so sure if I like that. We have this one that put a little body of water there. That's interesting. We might like that. Maybe I see that and get inspired to put a lake there. Then we have this one that looks pretty good. And then this one over here kind of more looks like here's our lounging area as opposed to the lodge. So I kind of like both of these. Okay, let's take this one here, and I'm just going to download this. And we're going to compare it to the one when we start using the snap process. Okay, so I'm looking at this and I say, well, this is pretty good. I kind of like this. There's some body of water there. So I'm going to change this from a lodge retreat in the mountains to comma a lake and press return. Okay, now I can see that this lodge is by a lake now. I'm not getting a lot of those reflections that I was looking for. And notice only one of them here is even large enough to be a corporate retreat. The others kind of look like maybe this is where you bring your family for a long weekend or something. It doesn't look like a place that you're going to have a corporate retreat in. So maybe I'll say, corporate retreat. Okay, we're getting better. However, the lodge is kind of still pushed off to the background. It's not necessarily fully in focus. And I'm just not getting something that looks all that inspiring. So I'll just do comma inspiring and press return. Okay, we're getting somewhere. This looks pretty good, I think. But what I'm pointing out here is that this isn't calling out corporate retreat, inspirational. So I'm here just typing these things into a text box, and I could keep going. I could keep prompting for more of these until I get it right. However, we need to keep moving on. So I'm going to start with our prompt that we generated using the snap process. So I'm going to paste that in and generate it. Wow, look at the difference here. I'm going to pull up the original image and let you compare it to what we have. Look how much more inspirational these images are that we generated. We've got that sun hitting those dramatic clouds. We've got the darker skies, the orange glow in our lodge. And there's actually a decent amount of space for me to put text. So I'm actually getting something that I want right away. Actually, this one looks pretty cool. So had I wanted to, I could go to the edit button and chosen show similar, and it would keep generating more of those. But right now, what I'm going to do is adjust my settings over on the right to make sure that we have all of the settings that we required from our snap process. So first of all, it's a square image right now. We want a wide screen image. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. The other thing that we said is we don't want people in the image. So I'm going to go to the advanced settings and I'm going to choose a negative prompt. As a matter of fact, I'm going to type people and person. Now, every one of these products has slightly different settings, but I am going to just walk you through a few things here. For example, look, you can have colors and tones. So you can have sort of a golden hour, pastel colors. You can change the lighting of this to, long time exposure, things like that. If you're familiar with camera work, you'll know exactly what these are. And then you could have close-ups, things like that. So we have all these different examples of what we could use. And then also, of course, we have photo and art. That was the one thing that we wanted to make sure is that we have photograph selected. And indeed, we do. So I'm going to go ahead and just generate another one of these. I'm already loving these images. They look great. There's just so much detail, but there's a few things that I would improve. First of all, these lodges, they seem a little bit small. And also, when I think about a corporate retreat lodge, I think big, tall windows. So let's see if we can't improve upon what the lodge looks like. So over here where it says exterior of a rustic lodge, I don't know that I need to say exterior because I'm already saying set in the mountains. So I'm realizing maybe I don't need that word. So maybe instead of saying exterior of a rustic lodge, I'll say large rustic lodge with tall glass windows. All right, and let's see what that generates. I'll press return. Wow. I mean, I think this is pretty incredible here. This is the one that I like. I actually think that I could use this for an image right now. So what I'm going to do is download this one. But remember, I had an experiment that I wanted to try where I was going to add lots of grass to maybe have a place to put a sign that's closer to the lodge. And this is just an experiment, so maybe it will look good, maybe it won't. So I'll just go ahead and right after by a lake, I'm going to do comma, lots of grass and press return. Cool. I mean, I think like this is another great one, right? I could have this one here with a signpost or this one here with a signpost as well. I might just download these as well to see how that would look. And then later I'll choose which one I want. I just did a few prompts here and already got the images that I'm looking for. All of these look great as a matter of fact. It's that snap process where we just took a moment to write down our objectives for that spark of an idea. Then we sat down and we put the nuances like the twilight scene here. And then we also decided what negative prompts we wanted so we didn't have people walking around inside or outside the buildings. And then finally, what we did was we just entered our prompt. And the very first prompt already gave us some very promising images. Now, of course, when you're doing this, your experience may vary. It could be that you get the right one the first time, or it could be you need to make some modifications along the way and do a few more revisions. But if you have any tokens or credits that you have to worry about, this will get you there faster. And that's the point of this. Okay, we did it. We only spent about a half an hour and I covered all of that content, plus we generated the images. So, of course, I would be remiss if I didn't show you what the final images look like. You can see I took one of them and just did a nice overlay of a box and put the text inside of that along with an RSVP QR code. And with the other one, I went ahead and put a sign in the front and put some text in there. So you could see that both of those were quite usable and I think they catch your attention. So here's what I'd like you to do. Give it a shot. Think of some image you want to create and use this template. And then if you think that this helped you save time, please like, comment, and subscribe on this YouTube channel. I would appreciate it. It really helps me a lot. Thank you.